Alright, this is Rodney for The Glorious Porpoise, and this is your podcast with a porpoise, and I just decided I'm going to record this while I'm driving my car. So, something just came to my brain, so I thought I'd share it with people. I'm a big comic book fan. I've been reading X-Men comics since the late 80s, and I'm currently rereading every single X-Men comic from 1963 forward. So, right now, in my reread of comics, I'm currently trolling through one of my favorite events that ever happened in the X books, called the Age of Apocalypse. For those of you who don't know, the Age of Apocalypse was an alternative storyline where the son of Charles Xavier goes back in time because he is determined that all the strife that his father has ever faced and his dream of the X-Men never came to be because of one man, and that man was Magneto. So he goes back in time to when Charles and Eric were both very young, and he's going to kill the man who would become Magneto. What he doesn't count on is that even in that young age, Xavier was extremely noble, and when his good friend becomes victim of this attack, he throws himself in the way. This causes a paradox where Legion, the son of Charles Xavier, can't exist if Xavier doesn't exist. So when he goes back in time and kills Xavier, he causes a paradox. This paradox creates a new timeline where everything ceases to be in all the X books, and a whole new series of X books came out. Now, really great storyline, really great alternative timeline where everything was different and Magneto was inspired by this selfless act to become the leader that he was. However, the world gets taken over by Apocalypse. Great storyline, great crossover, and really showed a grittier side of the world that would be without Charles Xavier. Now, the reason I bring all this up is because in the films that are coming out currently, they parallel a lot of the major story arcs that happen in the comic books. Now, these story arcs are very much... The reason they choose some of these story arcs is because of how popular they were in the comics. And we have the regular X-Men series, currently put out by Fox, that are... Then we have First Class, which was kind of a prequel story of, like, you know, how the X-Men came to be, the very first X-Men, and how Charles Xavier and Magneto started their class. And of course, everybody who follows any of this knows there's a current storyline leading up where Days of Future Past, a very popular storyline in the comic books, is becoming a feature film, which is going to cross over the prequel characters with the current storyline characters, a little bit of a step into that future. Now, with that new storyline coming, we also get news that the next X-Men storyline that's coming out will become X-Men Apocalypse. This is where it occurred to me. X-Men Apocalypse, the Age of Apocalypse storyline happened in the comic books because someone went back in time and changed history. The story of Days of Future Past originally was Kate Pryde in the future goes back in time into her own body, meeting the young X-Men, and pinpoints a time in history where they can avert the future that they are dealing with, where the Sentinels have taken over. Interestingly enough, and this is... Stay with me for a second. You've got the characters in the film timeline, the cinematic X-Men. You have the characters of the current day X-Men. Now, they're using Wolverine instead of Kitty Pryde, but Wolverine is going back in time into his own body so that he can help the X-Men of old stop the future from happening. The future where the Sentinels take over. What I would like to see in Days of Future Past, and I don't know if this is going to happen, but I think it would be pretty awesome, is if they go back in time, Wolverine goes back in time and changes the future, but just like in the Age of Apocalypse storyline, that it doesn't go back and he doesn't change the future the way he wanted to. What he does is he'll go back in time and he'll change the future, and then that's what X-Men Apocalypse will be. X-Men Apocalypse will be the cinematic version of the Age of Apocalypse storyline. So, that being said, I would love to see that future. And the reason that tied all this together was I was looking at that huge banner image that Empire put out on their covers. If you put all their covers together, it makes a big banner. One of the characters that's going to be featured in Days of Future Past is a character named Blink. They're also introducing Bishop. Bishop is a character from the X-Men's future, and he plays a major part in Age of Apocalypse. So he's in Days of Future Past, which he was not in the original. Blink was a character that was first introduced, very brief cameo in the Phalanx Covenant. She was a young mutant named Clarice. They didn't call her Blink. Clarice used her Blink powers to help the characters who eventually become Generation Next escape from the Phalanx. So that's a character that's only found in Age of Apocalypse, and she's in Days of Future Past. So it should be really interesting to see if they have the balls to take that step and change the history, even briefly, where they bring out an X-Men film in an alternate timeline. Or, dare I say it, rewrite history and ignore all the current X-Men films. I know there are people out there that are not fans of the X-Men films that are probably thinking that might not be the worst thing in the world. So, leave a comment below and let me know what you think of this theory, and maybe we'll go for a drive again and talk about some other crazy things that I think about in comics and movies and all sorts of things.